The crimson tapestries adorning the Imperial Palace of Vienna trembled in the autumn breeze as Captain Quinn Zabel adjusted his ceremonial sword. 8 years of service to Emperor Franz Joseph had earned him the coveted position of Imperial Guard Captain, yet on this particular October evening in 1887, the weight of his duties pressed upon him with unusual heaviness. "The Countess of Moravia approaches," announced the court chamberlain, his voice echoing through the marble antechamber. Quinn straightened his posture, eyes forward as custom demanded. The rustle of silk announced her presence before she appeared, Countess Felicity Fairchild, widow of the late British ambassador to the Austro-Hungarian Empire. At 32, her beauty had only deepened with time and sorrow. "Captain," she acknowledged with a slight nod, her English accent lending a musical quality to the single word. "Countess," he returned formally, not allowing his gaze to linger on her amber eyes or the elegant coil of copper hair at the nape of her neck. As she passed, a delicate scent of jasmine lingered in the air. Quinn drew a measured breath, steadying himself. For 3 years, he had maintained perfect decorum around the Countess, never betraying the quiet admiration that had taken root during her husband's diplomatic tenure. Now, as a widow completing her mourning period, she had returned to Vienna at the Empress Elizabeth's personal request, bringing her subtle grace back into court circles where Quinn stood eternal vigil. Later that evening, as the imperial reception for the Ottoman delegation proceeded, Quinn observed the Countess from his post. She conversed with elegant restraint, moving among the glittering nobility with the practiced ease of someone who understood her place in this elaborate social hierarchy without fully belonging to it. A British woman in the Austrian court, she navigated the intricate social protocols with graceful precision. "Captain Zabel," came a voice at his shoulder. "Her Imperial Highness requests you attend her in the Blue Salon." Quinn nodded, following the page through corridors lined with Habsburg portraits. Empress Elizabeth, the beloved Sisi, waited by the window, gazing out at the gardens. "Your Highness," Quinn bowed deeply. "Captain." The Empress turned, her legendary beauty shadowed by the melancholy that had marked her since her son Rudolph's estrangement. "I have a delicate task requiring absolute discretion. I serve at your Highness's pleasure." Elizabeth's fingers brushed the emerald pendant at her throat, a nervous habit she had developed in recent years. "The Countess Fairchild carries correspondence of a sensitive nature. Letters from my sister, the former Queen of Naples. I wish them delivered directly to me, bypassing the usual diplomatic channels." Quinn understood immediately. The Empress's sister had been deposed years earlier when Italy unified. Any correspondence between them would be scrutinized by multiple governments. "You will escort the Countess to her daily appointments," Elizabeth continued. "Ensure no harm, or unwanted attention, comes to her or the documents she carries." "As you command, Your Majesty." The following morning, Quinn presented himself at the Countess's residence, a modest but elegant townhouse near the Hofburg Palace. When she appeared, dressed in a tailored walking suit of deep plum, he noticed immediately how the color emphasized the warmth in her complexion, a detail a proper Imperial Guard had no business observing. "Captain Zabel," she said, genuine surprise crossing her features. "To what do I owe this honor?" "By order of Her Imperial Highness, I am to serve as your escort during your stay in Vienna." Her eyebrows rose slightly. "I see. And does Her Highness believe I am in danger?" "The Empress values your safety, Countess. Particularly given your diplomatic connections." Understanding dawned in her eyes. How thoughtful of Her Majesty. She reached for her gloves. "I had planned to visit the Kunsthistorisches Museum this morning. I trust that won't present any difficulties." "None whatsoever." As they walked through Vienna's grand boulevards, Quinn maintained a professional distance, yet found himself drawn into conversation with the Countess. "You were stationed in Budapest before Vienna, were you not, Captain?" she asked, surprising him with her knowledge of his career. "I was, for 3 years." "You have an impressive memory, Countess." A subtle smile curved her lips. "My late husband often remarked upon your exemplary service. He considered you the finest example of the Imperial Guard." Quinn felt a complex mixture of pride and discomfort at the mention of Lord Fairchild, a man he had respected deeply. "Your husband was a fine diplomat." His absence is felt keenly in court circles. Her expression softened with genuine grief. 2 years since his passing, yet some days it feels like yesterday. Other days? She paused. Other days, it feels like another lifetime entirely. At the museum, Quinn watched as Felicity moved through the galleries with thoughtful attention, lingering before Vermeer's intimate domestic scenes with particular appreciation. Her commentary revealed an educated mind and sensitive perception that drew him further into her orbit, despite his professional restraints. Days passed in similar fashion. Quinn escorted the Countess to her various appointments, morning calls to noble ladies, afternoon concerts, early evening receptions. They developed a comfortable rhythm, their conversations gradually deepening beyond polite exchanges. Yet always, Quinn maintained the invisible barrier that his position demanded. On their 10th day together, they visited the Imperial Gardens. Autumn had painted the formal landscape in rich golds and deep crimsons. As they walked along a secluded path bordered by carefully trimmed hedges, Felicity paused. "I must confess something, Captain," she said quietly. "I have not yet received the correspondence the Empress anticipates." Quinn frowned slightly. "I was led to believe you had already taken possession of the letters." There was a complication. Her gloved fingers twisted anxiously. "My contact will deliver them tonight, at the Liechtenstein Palace reception." "I should have been informed," Quinn said, his tone more clipped than intended. "I'm informing you now." Her amber eyes met his directly. "I trust you, Captain Zabel." "I'm not certain I can say the same for everyone at court." Her words stirred something in him, concern, certainly, but also a deeper feeling he dared not name. The Empress's instruction was clear. "I am to ensure your safety and the security of those documents." "Then you shall accompany me tonight," she replied simply, turning to continue their walk. The Liechtenstein Palace blazed with light that evening, its Baroque splendor providing a fitting backdrop for the Viennese aristocracy in their finery. Quinn remained vigilant at the periphery of the gathering, watching as Felicity navigated the crowd with practiced ease. She wore a gown of midnight blue that caught the candlelight like the night sky captured starlight. Near midnight, he observed her slipping away from the main ballroom toward the palace library. Following at a discreet distance, Quinn entered the book-lined room to find her in conversation with a woman he recognized as lady-in-waiting to the Spanish ambassador's wife. The exchange was brief. A small package passed between them. When Felicity turned and saw him, relief crossed her features. "It is done," she said quietly as they departed the reception moments later. "Though I fear I was observed by Countess Stavon." Quinn tensed. Countess Stavon served as Austria's spymaster, a man whose pleasant demeanor masked ruthless efficiency. "We'll take the side entrance. My carriage is waiting." In the relative privacy of the carriage, Felicity withdrew a sealed packet from her reticule. "The correspondence," she confirmed. "To be delivered directly to Her Majesty's hands." "I'll ensure it reaches her at tomorrow's morning audience," Quinn assured her, noting the strain in Felicity's expression. "Are you unwell, Countess?" She offered a tired smile. "Merely the exhaustion of intrigue, Captain. It doesn't suit me nearly as well as honest conversation." The carriage rolled through Vienna's darkened streets, the rhythm of the horses' hoofs filling the silence between them. When they arrived at her residence, Quinn escorted her to the door as was proper. "Captain," she said hesitantly as her butler opened the door. Would you care to come in for tea? The night is cold, and I find myself reluctant to be alone with my thoughts." Every protocol demanded he decline. Yet the vulnerability in her expression moved something in him beyond duty. "A brief respite would be welcome, Countess, thank you." In her drawing room, with its distinctly English furnishings that stood out among Vienna's more ornate tastes, Quinn found himself seated closer to Felicity than propriety typically allowed. The butler brought tea and then discreetly withdrew. "Tell me of your home, Captain," she said, passing him a delicate porcelain cup. "Not your duties or your position, but the place that shaped you." The unexpected personal question momentarily disarmed him. "I was born in Salzburg," he answered after a pause. "My father was a clockmaker." Our home stood in the shadow of the fortress, and as a boy, I would watch the changing of the Imperial Guards and dream of such glory. And now that you've achieved it, she asked, her gaze thoughtful. Is it everything you imagined? Quinn considered her question with unexpected seriousness. The honor is everything I hoped. But there are constraints I hadn't anticipated as a boy. The burden of always being watched, yet never truly seen, she murmured. I understand that better than most. Their eyes met in a moment of perfect recognition, and Quinn felt the dangerous shift in the atmosphere between them, no longer merely guard and charge, but man and woman acknowledging a kindred isolation. The mantel clock chimed once, breaking the spell. Quinn set down his cup. I've stayed too long, he said, rising to his feet. I should deliver these documents to the palace for safekeeping. Of course, Felicity stood as well. Thank you for indulging my request, Captain. Quinn, he said impulsively. My name is Quinn. A soft smile touched her lips. Quinn, she repeated, the sound of his name in her voice stirring something profound within him. Good night, then. Until tomorrow. The following weeks brought a subtle but unmistakable shift in their interactions. Though Quinn maintained every outward appearance of proper decorum, their conversations deepened, revealing layers of mutual understanding. Felicity shared stories of her childhood in the English countryside, of her marriage at 19 to a man 20 years her senior, a diplomatic arrangement that had eventually blossomed into genuine affection. Quinn, in turn, spoke of his military service, his love of music, his private passion for poetry, confessions he had shared with no one else at court. They discovered shared interests in literature and philosophy that transcended their different backgrounds. Then came the letter that changed everything. It arrived on a grey November morning when Quinn called to escort Felicity to the opera house for a rehearsal of Strauss's newest work. Her lady's maid handed him an envelope bearing his name in Felicity's elegant handwriting. The Countess sends her regrets, sir, the maid explained. She is indisposed this morning and asks that you read her note. Puzzled, Quinn waited until he was alone in the carriage before breaking the seal. The letter inside was unlike any correspondence he had ever received. My dear Quinn, forgive the impropriety of this letter, which breaks every convention I have respected throughout my life. Yet after our conversations these past weeks, I find myself unable to maintain the pretense that my feelings toward you are merely those of friendship or casual acquaintance. Since my husband's passing, I have believed my heart permanently closed to such emotions. I never anticipated finding someone who would understand the person beneath the title, someone whose mind and spirit would resonate so deeply with my own. I make no demands upon you. Indeed, I expect nothing. Your duty to the crown must remain paramount, as must my obligation to honor the Emperor and Empress who have shown me such kindness. Yet I could not continue in your company without acknowledging the truth of what I feel. With deepest regard. Felicity. Quinn read the letter twice, his heart pounding against his ribs. The words blurred before his eyes as he contemplated their implications, and the impossible choice they presented. His duty to the Emperor was absolute. Any personal entanglement with a court lady, particularly one under his direct protection, would be seen as a grievous breach of trust. Yet denying the truth of his own feelings seemed suddenly the greater betrayal. He instructed the coachman to return to the palace, his mind racing. The sealed letter seemed to burn in his pocket as he made his way to his quarters, nodding mechanically to fellow officers he passed in the corridors. Alone, he sat at his desk and withdrew parchment embossed with his family crest, a legacy from his father, used only for the most significant correspondence. His pen hovered over the page as duty and desire waged their silent war within him. Finally, he began to write, My dear Felicity, your letter has shown me a courage I have yet to demonstrate myself. You have given voice to feelings I have carried silently, believing them a betrayal of my oath and position. I have spent my life in service to the Empire, finding pride in duty perfectly executed. Never did I imagine that such duty would one day stand in opposition to the deepest wishes of my heart. What lies between us cannot be pursued while I serve as your protector. Yet I cannot deny its existence, nor do I wish to. With deepest respect and a devotion that transcends duty. Quinn he sealed the letter with trembling fingers, knowing that once delivered, there could be no retreat from the path he had chosen. The following day brought fresh complications. Upon arriving at court, Quinn was summoned immediately to Countess Stavon's offices, a rare occurrence that sent a chill of apprehension through him. The Count received him in a room lined with maps and diplomatic dispatches, his genial smile never reaching his calculating eyes. "Captain Zabel, thank you for your promptness. Please, be seated." Quinn remained standing. "I prefer to stand, sir, if it's all the same." "As you wish." The Count leaned back in his chair. "I've been reviewing the security arrangements for our British guests, particularly the Countess Fairchild. Her protection falls under my direct responsibility, by order of the Empress," Quinn confirmed, keeping his expression neutral. "Indeed. And by all accounts, you've executed that duty admirably." The Count's fingers tapped a rhythmic pattern on his desk. "However, certain observations have been brought to my attention. The Countess appears to be receiving correspondence outside normal diplomatic channels." Quinn's pulse quickened, though his face betrayed nothing. "The Countess assists with private communications between the Empress and her sister. Her Majesty personally authorized this arrangement." "Ah, yes. The former Queen of Naples." Countess Stavon smiled thinly. "A delicate situation. Though I wonder if all the letters passing through the Countess's hands are quite so familial." The implication hung in the air between them. Quinn understood immediately, someone had reported his personal letter to Felicity. Whether it had been intercepted or merely observed in transit remained unclear. "I assure you, Countess Stavon, the Countess Fairchild has conducted herself with absolute propriety during her time in Vienna." "I've no doubt." The Count rose, moving to a cabinet where he extracted a file. "Her late husband was a most respected diplomat. It would be unfortunate if any shadow were cast upon his widow's reputation." The veiled threat was unmistakable. Quinn felt cold anger rise within him, carefully controlled. If there are specific concerns regarding the Countess's activities, perhaps they should be addressed directly to Her Imperial Highness, as it was at her request that the Countess undertook her current role. Something flashed in Countess Stavon's eyes, annoyance, perhaps, at the mention of the Empress's authority. "That won't be necessary, Captain. Consider this merely a friendly conversation between colleagues concerned with imperial security." He closed the file with deliberate care. "You may continue your duties with the Countess. I'm confident your judgment in all matters remains sound." Quinn left the meeting with a growing sense of unease. The Count's interest in Felicity suggested surveillance beyond normal court observation. Whether his concern was truly diplomatic or stemmed from other motives remained unclear, but either possibility represented danger. He found Felicity in the palace conservatory that afternoon, sketching the exotic orchids the Emperor had imported from Brazil. When she looked up and saw him, her expression brightened momentarily before settling into careful neutrality. "Captain Zabel," she greeted him with perfect formality, though her eyes searched his for some sign of his response to her letter. "Countess." He bowed slightly, aware of the gardeners working nearby. "I wonder if you might accompany me to review the security arrangements for tomorrow's imperial procession." She understood immediately. Of course. They walked through the glass-domed structure, stopping only when they reached a secluded corner filled with towering palm trees from the colonies. "We're being watched," Quinn said without preamble, his voice barely above a whisper. "Countess Stavon summoned me this morning. He's aware of correspondence between us." Alarm crossed her features. "My letter to you?" "Possibly. Or mine to you." He was deliberately vague, but the implication was clear. Quinn glanced around, ensuring they remained unobserved. "Felicity, I fear I've placed you in a compromising position." "We've both taken risks," she countered, her voice steady despite the concern in her eyes. "Quinn, I meant what I wrote. I regret nothing except any difficulty this may cause you." "My position is secure enough," he assured her. "But yours, a foreign widow, dependent on the Empress's goodwill." "I'm not without resources of my own," she reminded him gently. My husband left me financially independent. And I have family in England who would welcome my return. The thought of her leaving Vienna created an unexpected hollowness in his chest. Is that what you wish? To return to England? Felicity's gaze dropped to the exotic blossoms surrounding them. What I wish and what may become necessary are rarely aligned in my experience. When she looked up again, there was resolve in her amber eyes. But I won't be driven away by innuendo or threat. Not unless. Unless, he prompted when she hesitated. Unless my presence causes harm to those I care about. The implication was clear: she would leave if staying endangered his position. Quinn wanted to reach for her hand but restrained himself, aware of the conservatory's glass walls. Give me time, he said quietly. There may be a way forward that doesn't require either of us to sacrifice what matters most. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Princess Stephanie, Rudolph's wife, who requested Felicity's company for afternoon tea. As Felicity departed with the princess, she gave Quinn a single backward glance that carried both promise and question. That evening, as Quinn stood guard during a state dinner honoring the Russian ambassador, an unexpected opportunity presented itself. Empress Elizabeth approached him during a moment when the diplomatic corps was distracted by a musical interlude. Captain Zabel, she said quietly, I would speak with you privately after the reception concludes. Yes, Your Majesty, he responded with a bow, wondering if Count Estevan had already brought his concerns to the imperial attention. Hours later, when the last guests had departed and the emperor had retired to his private chambers, Quinn was escorted to the empress's study, a room decorated with images of her beloved Hungary and volumes of poetry she admired. Your Majesty, Quinn bowed deeply as he entered. Elizabeth dismissed her ladies-in-waiting with a gesture. Once alone, she motioned for him to approach. Captain, you have served our family with distinction for many years. It has been my highest honor, Your Majesty. The Empress studied him with the penetrating gaze that had made her famous throughout Europe. At 49, she remained striking, though the vivacity of her youth had given way to a melancholic grace. You are aware that I value loyalty above all other virtues, she said, moving to the window that overlooked Vienna's glittering lights. In a court where every word is measured for advantage, genuine devotion is precious beyond measure. Yes, Your Majesty. Elizabeth turned to face him. The Countess Fairchild possesses such loyalty. She has undertaken delicate tasks on my behalf without hesitation or self-interest. Quinn maintained a neutral expression, unsure where the conversation was leading. I am also aware, the Empress continued with surprising directness, that Count Estevan has taken an unusual interest in the Countess's activities, and in yours, Captain. The Count expressed some concerns about correspondence, Your Majesty. Yes, he would. A flicker of something like amusement crossed Elizabeth's features. The Count forgets sometimes that while my husband rules the empire, I observe its currents. She moved to her desk, opening a drawer to withdraw a sealed document. Your service to the crown has been exemplary, Captain Zabel. Yet I wonder if you might serve both Austria and me better in a different capacity. She handed him the document. This is a diplomatic appointment to our embassy in London. The position of military attaché has become vacant, and I believe your experience makes you uniquely qualified. Quinn stared at the sealed paper, stunned by the unexpected turn. Your Majesty, I? Consider it carefully, Elizabeth advised, her voice gentler than he had ever heard it. A new position would, of course, release you from your current duties, including your responsibility for the Countess Fairchild's security. Understanding dawned. The Empress was offering him an honorable path away from the constraints of his current position, one that would allow him to pursue Felicity without compromising his duty. Why? He asked before he could stop himself. Elizabeth's smile held genuine warmth. Because happiness is too rare a commodity to sacrifice unnecessarily, Captain. And because I believe both you and the Countess have earned the right to choose your own paths. Her expression grew momentarily distant. Not all of us are granted such freedom, even on a throne. The reference to her own famously constrained marriage wasn't lost on Quinn. I'm deeply grateful for your Majesty's consideration. Speak with the Countess, Elizabeth instructed. The appointment doesn't require immediate acceptance. You have until the new year to make your decision. Later that night, Quinn penned a note requesting Felicity meet him the following day at the Belvedere Gardens, a public location where they might speak with less scrutiny than at court. He chose his words carefully, aware that even this innocent request might be intercepted. Morning brought crisp sunshine that glittered on the palace's baroque splendor. Quinn arrived early, pacing the gravel paths between sculpted hedges as he contemplated the life-altering choice before him. The diplomatic position would be considered an advancement by most standards, yet it would mean leaving the direct service that had defined his career. When Felicity appeared, wrapped in a forest green cloak that emphasized her copper hair, Quinn felt the now familiar tightening in his chest that her presence always evoked. "You look troubled," she observed as she joined him beside a marble fountain where the noise of falling water would mask their conversation. "Not troubled," he corrected, offering his arm to guide her along a less frequented path. "But facing an unexpected crossroads." He explained the Empress's offer, watching Felicity's expression shift from surprise to careful consideration. "London," she murmured when he had finished. "My family estate is just 2 hours from the city." The position would mean leaving direct service to the imperial family, Quinn explained. "But it would also free you from the constraints of your current responsibilities," she completed his thought, understanding immediately. "Including your duty to maintain distance from a certain English countess." "Yes." Quinn stopped walking, turning to face her directly. "Felicity, I must ask, would such a change align with your own wishes? Your life is here in Vienna now, at the Empress's court." Her amber eyes searched his face. "My life is where I choose to make it, Quinn. I've spent years adapting to others' expectations and needs, my parents', my husband's, the court's. For once, I find myself contemplating a choice based solely on what my heart desires." "And what does your heart desire?" he asked softly, though he scarcely dared hope for her answer. "A chance," she replied with simple honesty. "A chance to discover if what lies between us might grow into something enduring when freed from the shadows of court intrigue and duty." Hope bloomed in Quinn's chest. "Then you would consider returning to England?" "I would consider building a new chapter wherever it might be written with you," she answered, her voice steady despite the emotion shimmering beneath her words. "But Quinn, I would not have you sacrifice a position that brings you fulfillment and purpose. The decision must be yours alone." He shook his head slowly. "Not alone. Never again alone." 3 months later, as winter's grip on Vienna began to loosen, Quinn stood on the platform of the Westbahnhof railway station. His new uniform, that of an Austro-Hungarian military attaché, felt strange after years in the Imperial Guard's distinctive attire. Beside him, Felicity directed the loading of her trunks into the first-class compartment of the train bound for Paris, where they would connect to Calais and then to London. "Captain Zabel," came a familiar voice. Both Quinn and Felicity turned to find Countess Stavon approaching, his customary pleasant smile firmly in place. "Or should I say, Major Zabel now? My congratulations on your promotion and new appointment." "Thank you, Count," Quinn responded with careful neutrality. "And Countess Fairchild," the Count continued, bowing over Felicity's gloved hand. "Vienna will be poorer for your departure. I understand you'll be re-establishing yourself in London society." "For a time," Felicity answered with diplomatic vagueness. "Though I've grown quite fond of Austria during my stay." "Indeed?" The Count's shrewd eyes moved between them. "How fortunate that Major Zabel's new posting coincides with your own return to England. The diplomatic corps will benefit from your acquaintance." The implication hung in the air, but Quinn found he no longer cared for the Count's insinuations. With the Empress's blessing and his new commission secure, such petty maneuvering had lost its power to threaten. "The Empress herself suggested the Major might call upon me should he require any assistance navigating London society," Felicity replied with perfect composure. "Her Majesty's thoughtfulness extends to all her loyal servants." The mention of Elizabeth's direct involvement caused a momentary tightening around the Count's eyes. "How very considerate of Her Imperial Highness. I wish you both safe travels." As he departed, Felicity turned to Quinn with a barely concealed smile. "I believe the Count has just realized his game was countered before he even began to play." "By a master strategist," Quinn agreed, thinking of the Empress's subtle orchestration of their futures. The station master's whistle cut through the morning air, signaling the train's imminent departure. As they boarded and settled into their private compartment, Quinn found himself struck by the enormity of the change before them, not just in location, but in the fundamental nature of their relationship. No longer guard and charge, they were now two people free to explore the connection that had grown between them despite every barrier of position and propriety. As the train pulled away from Vienna's Grand Station, Felicity reached across the space between them, her gloved fingers brushing his in a gesture that would have been scandalously intimate just weeks earlier. "Are you certain of this path?" she asked, her voice barely audible above the gathering rhythm of the wheels on tracks. Quinn turned his hand to clasp hers properly, the simple contact sending warmth through his entire being. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Outside the window, Vienna receded into the distance, the golden spires and imperial grandeur giving way to the Austrian countryside. Ahead lay London, with its fog and formality so different from the Baroque splendor they left behind. Yet in that moment, as winter sunshine filtered through the glass and illuminated Felicity's smile, Quinn knew with absolute certainty that they were not leaving home behind, but traveling toward it together. A forbidden letter had indeed changed everything, transforming duty into choice, constraint into possibility, and two solitary paths into one shared journey.